to bring to you a new variety, a new version of our show. And we're going to focus now on all of the law and the legal ramifications of this COVID-19 and any other questions or concerns you might have, similar to last Tuesday's event last week. If any of you joined us on this past Tuesday, I was honored and flattered to be able to talk with you and ask questions of Ashley Silverman. She's been a stay-at-home mom and someone who has overcome a lot of emotional and physical trials and tribulations, and she's just thriving in this time that we are all staying at home. And next Tuesday, I'm going to be bringing to you another great motivational speaker, a great person, Tom Laidlaw. He's a former NHL player, and he's great in terms of motivation and inspiration, and I thought that could help you, especially during this time where so many of us have so many uncertainties and anxieties. While some are thriving and some are reveling in the stay-at-home order and time at home, many of you are very anxious and nervous because of the unknown, and we have a lot of fears. But hopefully on these Tuesdays and these broadcasts, they can bring some sort of relief, letting you know we're all in this together and we all have our own challenges. And so today I want to bring to you two, again, of my esteemed colleagues, Hugh Woodrow and Brian Cermak. They were with me a week and a half ago on that Tuesday, answering a lot of questions that you have relative to the law and any aspect of your life in terms of the legal consequences and ramifications of this period. And if you have questions that don't relate to this pandemic, of course, always bring them to us at the Cronin Law Firm. And you can reach us anytime. Our local number is 248-258-3500, and our 800 number is 855-CALL-CRONIN. So without further ado, I'm going to bring to you first Brian Cermak. He's our senior litigation attorney. He's a specialist in litigation and transactional work. He's been a practicing attorney for many, many years. He knows all the ins and outs. He's a powerhouse in the courtroom and with any kind of business matter. Brian, I'm going to show you now. Welcome. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Sabrina. How are you?
How are you today?
I'm surviving, as we all
love
are.
your facial growth. I haven't seen you in person in so long.
It's been a while. Yeah, I decided this is like the hockey teams that grow a beard until the Stanley Cup's over. I'm going to just let it grow until CV19's over, or some things get back to normal.
Yeah. Well, they're saying now that we're going to be having a new normal, I don't think things will ever be the same. Do you?
No, I think you're going to see masks out. And I think even after they get a vaccination, I think you're going to see people wearing masks like they do in China and Japan. Before the virus came out, they wore them all the time. You go to an airport in Tokyo, you'd see half the people wore masks. I think you're going to see that a lot of. I think you're going to see a lot of people afraid to go to restaurants. Quite frankly, a fear would be, okay, they say you can go out and you can sit maybe 6 feet apart between tables, but how confident are you in the kitchen staff and the cleanliness, and did they really scrub it down, and who was there before? And realize when you go to a restaurant, you can't eat with a mask on. So I think you're going to see a very, very slow change back to normal, and there will be a new normal, whatever that may be.
I think so too. And I think in the courtrooms as well. I mean, I know we've already been experiencing that. Our firm has still been very busy, very active, still filing pleadings and motions with the court, still dealing with all of our clients. But what have you seen that you can express to our viewers relative to this period and then moving forward?
I've seen a smorgasbord of things. I mean, there are some judges, I filed motions, and everything's done for most of the counties electronically. So you submit it and everybody sees it. You get an email and says, here's something that's been filed. And let's say it's a motion with the court. Some of the judges ignore you. You schedule a hearing day and the hearing day comes and goes. You can't reach the judge. You can't reach the clerk, so you reschedule it.
Right.
Some judges I've had respond and just grant the motion, send an order out, cancel the hearing. We've decided it on the briefs that you filed. So I think it depends upon the judge and his staff and the county you're in. Certainly I found less responsiveness in Wayne County because, of course, there's a hotbed down there. That's where the most deaths are. That's where the most cases are. Oakland County, I'm starting to get some notices out, scheduling things for the end of May, beginning of June. I just got a notice for a trial first week in June. I'll be interested to seeing what type of precautions the court puts in to get people into the courthouse. You get 50 veneermen, which are potential jurors, to pack
Right.
a courtroom that you pick. How are you going to socially distance 50 people? I mean, the very fact about don't have people coming together if you've got a group of 10 or more, well, that screws up the trial, especially if you've got a couple of defendants, couple of plaintiffs, couple of attorneys, 3 or 4 court staff, a judge, and 8 jurors. Kind of crazy.
You know, I think, to your point, I think this could change our judicial system as we know it. Everybody says our system in America is not perfect, but it's the best one in the world. But now, if this pandemic causes, like you said, not to have jury trials anymore, and it really pushes, as we've seen over the years, the alternative dispute resolutions, whether it's mediations or facilitations or arbitrations, I think that's going to be more in line with what the courts are going to force us to do.
Well, I'm hoping that some of the judges and some of the courts are going to realize that there is a benefit to maybe doing some things video-wise. A typical day, if you go to a motion call in one of the courts, you'll see 50, 60 lawyers packed around waiting for their turn to get in front of the judge. Some of the cases, I admit, I think it's very important to be there face-to-face, react live with your opponent, with the judge. Sometimes you have to have some hearing. Might have to have a witness sworn in. But for a lot of these motions, I think maybe we can streamline the process, free up some court time, and maybe do it that way. Who knows? Some of these things might be adapted as the new norm. And I think you're going to probably see a whole bunch of county sheriffs before you after you go through the metal detector, they're going to hand you a mask.
Well, and I think they're going to be doing the new, that testing if you've had a fever. I don't really know the technical term of it, but, there more and more places will probably enact that.
Well,
that you can't go somewhere if you've had a fever or.
And I was watching on the news today, maybe we'll start having drones. Apparently, there's this new thing out. There was a drone and some software that was developed that when you had an earthquake and crumbled buildings, right, this drone could go out and detect and see bodies to see even slightly breathing or motions to say, there's someone that's living, there's someone's not. Let's focus our efforts here. Now they're trying to adapt that to fly over crowds and places to detect people that are, they can detect heat. So they might have a fever. And of course, the first one to respond was the ACLU. Don't you dare, civil liberties. Big Brother's watching. So that'll be an interesting development.
Well, now they're even saying about the, the chips in the immunizations or the phones tracking people. It's just, I know, it's crazy. I know.
They say they need it. And so you get 2 ways. You can go like the governor of New York is hiring 1,500 people to make calls and trace and then log it and create a database. Google and Apple are getting together with software. Of course, though, their concern is privacy. And the bottom line is it's going to be opt-in software. So how effective is going to be if you are CV positive or you've had it and you're walking around as your carrier and you don't engage the app on your phone, you can walk up to 50 people and they won't know they weren't coming in contact. So it's going to be like a trust system. Please log in,
Yeah. Good luck with that. Well, I want to also bring to the table now our other esteemed colleague, Hugh Woodrow. Hugh has been a practicing attorney for also many years. And hi, Hugh.
Good morning.
I know that you were with us last time as well. And we talked a lot about the small business loans and businesses during this time. What have you seen? I know you're up on it because we have clients that you're handling their matters for relative to small businesses. And in terms of the banks now, are they really out of money? Is the SBA really out of money?
The short answer to that is yes. I mean, they burned through the first 349 billion And last I heard, there's still 700,000 applications in the queue that they haven't even looked at yet. With the bill that the Senate passed yesterday and the House is geared to vote on today, that puts another 300, I believe it's 320 billion, so a total of 670 billion into the Small Business Association loan bank, so to speak, for the PPP, as well as the emergency or economic disaster relief loans, which is another avenue a lot of businesses are going to, because quite frankly, I've heard from a lot of businesses, they've applied, they've gotten notices that they've been approved for the PPP, but they haven't seen anything yet. But then you have some of these larger corporations out there that have received extensive funds from the PPP to keep open in the tune of $20 to $30 million in some cases, and they've already gotten it. And I think that also plays a lot into, I know there's been some talk about investigations in the Wells Fargo and Bank of America to investigate their priority treatment of some of their larger clients and how they push their paperwork through ahead of everybody else because they want to keep those relationships. I understand doing that, and banks have been doing that since the dawn of time. So I don't know how you can truly stop that, but at the same time, it does put a major damper and effect on the smaller businesses that, in my opinion, would need it more. $20,000 to Harvard isn't going to do anything if they get it today or next week. But you know what? $20,000 to the guy that runs the corner, Coney Island, definitely will do something in the next week. So
yeah, and it's unfortunate that they didn't, think that through a little bit more. And is it just because people in higher places have more clout, have more power? I think that's a lot of it.
Well, it is. And it's also the federal government was in such a hurry to pump this money out. They didn't have the time truly to put in all the stipulations and create the proverbial governmental red tape that is normally associated with loans. They wanted to get the money out into the economy to help stimulate our economy and keep it going and get people paid, because they're worried about making their rent payment, making the mortgage payment, paying the utilities. And they had to get this money out there to do it. And by giving the money to the small businesses, that was the best way to do it. I did hear this morning, thankfully, they are looking into reevaluating some of these larger companies that got these larger loans to basically figure out if they truly needed it. And they're going to be asking a lot of them to pay it back. I mean, Harvard has agreed to pay it back. Some of the other larger companies I know have agreed to pay money back. Some have said no. So I think the money has gone out. But they did say they're going to start taking a firmer look at the people that have received money and whether they truly needed it, and asking for someone to come back.
Right. So if a potential client needs help, where should they turn? What should they do?
Again, if they have a current relationship with a banker that's a small business, an SBA approved lender already, that's the best way to go. But to get the economic, what do they call it? There's a couple of different economic injury disaster loans out there through the Express Bridge loans or debt relief program if you already have them. But those you apply for directly through the SBA website. You don't go to your lender for those. And that can get you up to $35,000, $10,000 under one and $25,000 under another relatively quickly. I do believe there's aspects in effect that those loans also can be forgiven if the criteria is correct, but that is supposed to kind of be an emergency fund that you can get money $10,000 under one and $25,000 on the other very quickly. That hopefully, if you haven't gotten your PPP money, you could apply for those and get those, and it could augment and or supplement it until you get it. The problem I'm seeing with that also is the SBA is overwhelmed like many banks are. So even though you get your application in for it, it's still going to take a while for them to review it and or approve it, even though there's very little due diligence done anymore to approve it. So,
okay.
And yeah, I mean, that's the best bet to do, is for these individuals to go onto the SBA website themselves. It's pretty simple to use. There's 4 icons for the different types of loans that you want: the PPP, the economic injury disaster loan, bridge loans, express loans. You just click on the one and it pops up forms for you to fill out and submit. And that's what I've been suggesting to my clients to do at this point.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have a lot of clients at the firm, who have called us, and like your mug there, Hugh. And I also like your flowers. They're kind of matching mine. It's interesting. Yeah. In any event, we have a lot of clients, and I want them to know that they can call us anytime for any of their, concerns and questions. And Hugh or Brian, myself, or a number of our other members of our amazing team are there to help. So I do have a question for Brian right now. We just got a caller that has called and asked a question of Brian. Are there any legal consequences, Brian, for people who participate in protests right now, and perhaps who are not practicing their social distancing?
I'll give you the typical lawyer answer. It depends. It depends upon where the protest is and what the state is. Currently, if there is a local law or an edict by a governor in a state that absolutely mandates 6 feet apart, and you have a local law enforcement that wants to enforce it. There are some places out there giving tickets to people, tickets to people that are on the beach that are sitting a few feet from each other with coolers. You can sit 6 feet or 10 feet away, but you can't be right next to each other. Yes, you could be ticketed for not the protest, but you could be ticketed because you violated the local ordinance or the law. But quite frankly, excuse me, there are very few jurisdictions where the police are standing around and writing tickets for what they consider frivolous. I think they've got more important things to attend to.
Well, and I think they're giving out more warnings than anything. I know a couple businesses have been, for instance, stopped while en route either to and from the hardware store, or trucks with, obvious logos and obvious, transportation to and from work sites that they shouldn't be doing. And so that has definitely put a firm stop to things, but I have never heard of anybody actually getting a citation here in Michigan anyway.
On the west side of the state, Hugh, one of your clients, had somebody driving to work.
The police have stopped a few employees of a client of mine by actually in one of the other online forums I involved myself in yesterday. One of a business owner told me their son, who's 16 years old, was ticketed by a DNR officer. They live along a river. He walked about a half a mile down the river to his fishing spot, and him and his friend, who were exercising their social distancing, they were more than 6 feet apart, both got ticketed because they were too far from home. They were half a mile away, and they walked there, and he gave them a ticket.
What city was that?
That was near Midland.
Well, that's interesting. Was it, Hugh, was it in a public park, or was it in a private one of the state parks, which are still closed?
It was on state land along a river that they live on. They own property on the river, and they walked down to an area that they normally fish at. They weren't out in a boat. They walked there. They were fishing from the riverbank, and the DNR stopped these two kids that were sitting there fishing. And according to this individual, were basically harassed by this DNR officer and issued a ticket for being too far from home.
Well, the too far from home surprises me. I'd look at that ticket carefully. My guess is they cited him for going into a closed park, because DNR they can't just go out and tickle people. There are only certain things they can do, and you can't ticket somebody that I've ever heard of. Now, I might be wrong because you're too far from home.
Well, I agree with you, but as we were talking earlier, there's 56 now executive orders that are in place since this COVID-19 hit from Governor Whitmer. Some have been repealed and or replaced with other ones, but according to those orders, I was reading quite a few of them this morning. One of her executive orders states that you are not allowed to congregate with any other people outside of your household, period. Not one person, not 10, not anybody. So
it's very black and white. Yeah. And it's extreme in my opinion. And when someone's following that, whether it's a new officer who's, anxious to get his quota filled, or someone who's been retired for several years, if they're gung-ho about maintaining those laws and orders, they're going to follow the letter of the law to the nth degree. And unfortunately, we have all that disparate treatment among our state right now, and it's just not just, in my opinion.
You also have several counties and several county sheriffs saying, we're not going to enforce the executive orders, which is causing a bigger problem.
Yeah, and there's a lot of confusion around these right now. What's going to be enforced? When's it going to be enforced? How's it going to be enforced? Are they even constitutionally legal?
Right. Well, there are several contemplative lawsuits against the governor, I know right now. I mean, and it's just, obviously that's hard to do, but as we know, governmental immunity is real. So I don't know. I'm getting some more questions in. I guess we can pontificate all day long, right? But we're not the lawmakers, so
we should be. We'll
do our jobs. Are law firms available to help with unemployment applications? Where should we go to receive assistance with these applications? Whether it's for an individual receiving government assistance or a business, is that possible? Who wants to help with that one?
I'll give you my 2 cents. Filing for unemployment in this day and age, with the lines and the systems crashing, I think Michigan's unemployment system, the online system, crashed. It's still out today. I think it's supposed to be back up tomorrow.
Unemployment.
Yeah, unemployment. I mean, you used to be able to just go knock on a door and go to the unemployment office. Of course, many of those are closed, so they're encouraging online. The online system crashes. I know for me, that's something I would tell a client, you just got to put in the time and be on hold on either the phone or online. And I can't sit there as an attorney to be there for that entire process. Of course, the questions are pretty simple. I mean, where you worked, what you earned, when you're out. And it's something that I don't think lends itself to assistance. I mean, if somebody wants to call the firm and talk to one of us about what the questions are going to be so they're prepared, and what information do I need, we certainly can help them with that.
Yeah, I actually talked to a client about this very thing the other day. He actually applied for unemployment before COVID-19 shut down back in February, and he still hasn't seen a single check yet. And Michigan, again, has been one of the worst states from what I'm reading when it comes to this. Our unemployment system was not working well to begin with. I think they were going through some type of an upgrade or change on the website when all this hit, and that just caused it to crash again. And a lot of the information from the old system didn't transfer to the new system. So it was just a convergence of the perfect storm that is not good for us. And like I said, this one client that I had earlier that applied back in February still hasn't seen a dime of his unemployment that he's absolutely and totally entitled to, and he hasn't gotten it yet. So, he called me and asked me what to do. He told me he was on the phone with the unemployment agency in Michigan for 6 hours last Friday before he got disconnected.
Well, I do know that they're granting the unemployment, applications more, freely than ever before. People aren't contesting it, or the assistance is supposedly out there, and it's especially during this time now. But it's like everything else in our great nation. Everybody's running out of money. They're overloaded. They're backlogged. They don't have enough manpower, and it's difficult for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's really very little an attorney can do to help you with that. If you applied and got your application in, you're supposed to receive it. We can't sue the state for you to get it.
Right. Well, I think, Hugh, I have another question. I think it goes to you. What happens if my spouse passes away due to COVID-19 without an estate planning or any documents relative to estate planning? And how are things being handled with the court system? Are they operating? How could they, do anything when the probate courts?
Well, like we state in our estate planning workshops that we put on, we have one this Saturday, actually. The good news is the state has a plan for you. It's called probate court. Whether you have an actual estate plan put in place or not, there are laws and rules and regulations in place to dictate what's going to happen, and it's called probate court. I don't recommend anyone going there if they can avoid it, and proper estate planning is a good way to avoid it. But if there is no proper estate planning documents in place, then yes, you have to open up an estate with the probate court. That's closed right now, so you can't do that. The good news is it's not something you have to do immediately. You do have a fairly significant amount of time after someone has passed to open that estate. I guess the biggest issue would be if you're getting pushback from any financial institutions saying you can't access accounts or funds because they were in that person's name alone. I believe you still can. I have filed some guardianship and probate matters on an emergency basis. The court might consider that an emergency in order to access funds. If you need to access to those funds that were in that person's name individually, in order to make the mortgage payment, in order to make your medical payments or whatever, then that could be considered an emergency, and you could file the emergency petition to open the estate based on that. And yes, we can help with that.
Well, Hugh, you earlier talked about our workshops. Can you, while you're talking, Brian, if you want to take a short break, I'm going to ask you to talk for just a couple minutes about our workshops and what benefit they can serve for our clients or potential clients. And please explain, a little bit about those, if you will.
Sure. We put on these workshops usually twice a month, usually on a Saturday morning from 10 to noon, then another one during the week in the evening. We've identified what we call the 7 threats to your estate. They go through what are the prominent threats to your estate and why you should have an estate plan. These workshops that we put on are purely educational. It's not a hard sell for you to sign up with us or anything. It's basically educational to tell you what the different aspects of an estate plan are, what the different documents are that encompass a comprehensive estate plan, between the wills, the powers of attorney, a trust, the different types of trusts you can have. And it really helps individuals understand how these documents can work together and what a true estate plan is. We get a lot of people that come in the door saying, well, I need a will. And they don't truly understand what a will does. And as I like to say in our workshops, a will means you will go to probate court. A will does not avoid probate for you. You can avoid probate and not have anything go through probate if it's set up in a trust and everything in the trust is set properly. So the trust is the true vehicle that helps you avoid probate if that's your goal, which in my opinion should be anybody's goal. I mean, a trust truly allows you to dictate and or control where your stuff goes upon your demise or when you die, and how your beneficiaries get it, when they get it, how much they get it at certain points in time. And it's one of those few areas where actually your wishes and your desires can supersede the law. You can not follow the rules and regulations and laws within probate if you have a trust set up properly. And it's a great vehicle to use to ensure that your beneficiaries, your loved ones that you leave behind, get your stuff in the manner that you want them to get it. And like I said, we conduct these workshops at least twice a month. We also do them for private groups and individuals. If you have a company and you want us to put one on just for your employees, or if you have a group of people in an assisted living facility, we've done those. We've done them for banks and whatnot. And we're more than happy we're doing them remotely now, obviously through Zoom meetings or GoTo meetings. And we have our PowerPoint presentation. Then after we get done with the workshop, we open it up to questions and comments that people have. And
we have one this Saturday, right?
We do. We have one this Saturday from 10 to noon. If you're interested, you can send an email to info@callcroninlaw.com and we'll get you the link to it, because it is an invite only type thing. I mean, you need the link in order to join, and that way
we have lots of valuable information. So we hope you join. Again, it's info@callcroninlaw.com. Brian, I'm going to bring you back because I have another question for you. Or Hugh, I guess this guys kind of goes to both of you, but I have a question here. It says, as an employer, I have not received my loan. I will need to start laying off employees. If I cannot afford to hire them back, will I be sued?
I don't know why they would get sued.
Yeah, by who?
I don't know who would sue them. I mean, obviously you can lay off employees, and Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you get your PPP loan, you have until June 30th to hire them back and reestablish your employee count. Even if you hire somebody else to replace someone, that still counts towards hiring them back, and your loan could technically be forgiven at that point in time. But
yeah, it doesn't have to be the same person. Technically, it just is it's a body taking up payroll, right?
in,
To have
in
that,
the same position.
yeah.
So yeah, you can do. I mean, so you have until June 30th to hire that person back, and that I could see that being extended under the current guidelines if this goes out much longer. I mean, they're going to have to give people more time to hire back. But the other point on that is that the PPP is technically a loan with a very generous forgiveness of that loan option, and you might not have all of it forgiven, but you can get some of it forgiven. So even if you don't replace that employee, then just the amount that you receive from that won't be forgiven. You'll have to pay it back. And the terms are, I think it's basically 0% interest for 5 years, Brian. Is that correct? I think.
I thought it was 2 to 3 years, but either way, it's unbelievable terms.
Yeah. So you should, I mean, you won't get sued by the government to pay that back, but you will have to pay it back at 0% over an extended period of time.
So I have another one. If I cannot afford, well, actually, sorry, that was that question. If I have a few employees who are sick with COVID, 2 have tested positive, but 1 will not be tested. Can I be liable as an employer for laying off an employee who will seek sick pay for COVID if she refuses to test, or even if she doesn't refuse to test, I guess? I mean, I don't really understand the question, but I guess they're asking if this employer can be liable for laying off an employee when they can't work.
No. First of all, let's assume that the employee, as most employees in the state of Michigan are, at-will employees. So you really don't have to have a reason to terminate an employee. Now, I think you have to have a policy, and if the policy is, and OSHA tells you got to have a safe work environment. So you say, okay, here, guys, if you're sick, we want you to follow the government order. We want you to self-quarantine. Maybe the employer makes available 6 times, take it first, etc., or a leave without pay. But you're not opening yourself to liability under the circumstances that I think he's describing there, or he or she.
Okay.
And there was some earlier discussion on this as well, that you can require your employee to get a note from their doctor saying they are no longer contagious and therefore no longer a danger to other employees. If they refuse to do that or can't produce that letter, then you're under no obligation to allow them to come back into your workplace and be a danger to other employees.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. What about when, I have some more questions here. I understand that individuals who are older are more at risk from COVID-19 than younger people, particularly those with underlying medical conditions. May I have different policies for older employees, or is that discrimination?
Well, it depends upon what kind of policy you're talking about. The general policy, are we talking about staying at home? Are we talking... you cannot discriminate.
I can't read their mind.
You cannot discriminate because of a person's age. That's a protected class. Okay. However, I think in these situations where typically you've got a class of individuals that are over, they say 65, and have underlying conditions, are more susceptible. I think anything you do, I assume the gentleman or the woman is trying to say this, that they want to send people home until it's safe for them. It's in their best interest. But if you're allowing everybody else to work and just saying, you got to stay home because you're old, and I'm only going to do it, you might be opening yourself up to a potential claim. However, though, if that claim came to fruition and you had to sit in front of a judge or jury and say, Judge, I was doing what was right to protect my employees. They are, by all account, by the president, and we know he knows everything, by the president and all the people that know this stuff are more susceptible. I was doing something to help them. I don't think a judge or a jury is going to say, shame on you, and give the other guy money. You got to be careful, though. if you start distinguishing on any protected class, whether it's because of the color of your skin, your religious affiliation, your sexual orientation, whether you're a man or a woman, age is one of them. It seems to me that if you want to make a case to have a policy that's involving COVID-19, you shouldn't do something just for the elderly, because let's face it, now we had a death of a 5-year-old here in Michigan 2 days ago. Only 50% or 40 some percent of the cases, the known cases, are over 60 years old. So I really don't even think you could make the logical argument that there's a reason to discriminate or distinguish between 65-year-olds and younger.
Did that 5-year-old have an underlying medical condition? Do you know?
I heard not.
Yeah.
It was his mother and father. The mother, I believe, is a Detroit police officer, and the father is a firefighter. We haven't heard anything how the baby got it, but no, the baby got it and died quickly. Pretty sad.
And again, I mean, if you look at the national statistics as well as the ones in Michigan, we're not following the rest of the world in the age category of people getting it. I mean, we have just as many people under the age of 60 and 55 or whatever that are getting it that are older, and even the mortality rate really isn't following what the rest of the world was reporting. And as the numbers come back and true analysts look at this data, that might change worldwide as well. We really don't know. I mean, it seems like it was affecting the elderly population in China and Italy more than it was here. And that might just be because they had a larger percentage of an elderly population. I mean, if you look at that,
more intense, the stronger it went, right?
So, I mean, but yeah, the United States infection and mortality rate has not really been anywhere near that age criteria.
I have another question relative to this whole virus. May an employer take employees' temperatures before allowing them to enter the workplace?
Brian, you're muted still.
You're muted.
Oops. It was like the puppet. Mouth was moving, but no words are coming out.
Okay.
I don't see anything wrong. I think you can establish a policy and do it across the board. I mean, let's face it, they're doing temperatures at various places that are starting to open. And I think you're going to see that at restaurants. I think you're going to see them before you can walk in. Do you have gloves? Do you have a mask? And let me take the quick temperature. And if you've got a temperature, we refuse to serve you. I think an employer can do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the key for our clients to know, or anybody listening out there, is that they have to do it across the board. They can't pick and choose which employee they want to take the temperature to. That's when you get into trouble. If this policy is going to be in place in a private, institution, whether a private business, they have to maintain this policy across the board. No disparate treatment. So, and that means if you have multiple locations, you have to do it really for all employees, right?
Well, yeah, it's just like, there's a standard thing with the car manufacturers. At their assembly plants, when they build up a plant, there are lots of times outside contractors coming in, not to produce the cars, but to build the plant itself, put the assembly line together. And I know for a fact that all the big three here, in all of their subcontracts, basically required the people to go and get a drug test within 24 hours or 48 hours before they set foot on their premises. Same difference. We want you to have your temperature taken before you can come and sit down, for the protection of us and our customers.
And even under the current guidelines set forth by the federal government, as well as emergency or executive orders now, if you are an essential employee or you are an employer of essential function, like the grocery stores and whatnot, I mean, they are telling them that, their employees have a certain criteria that they have to go through before they start every shift. And one of those is, I know someone in particular that works in a grocery store. Every day before she goes in to do her shift, she has to fill out this questionnaire. Have you been exposed to anybody that you know of that's contracted COVID? Do you have a fever? Have you had a fever in the last 24 hours? Have you been in contact with anyone that's had a fever in the last 24 hours? And if she answers yes to any of those, they tell her to go home.
Yeah, right. Well, here's another interesting question. we're hearing about these stimulus checks that the government is issuing. This has nothing to do with a business. This has nothing to do with the PPP loans or grants. Apparently, a woman in Texas lost her stimulus check to creditors. Have either of you heard about that?
That's the first I've heard of it.
The question is, can that happen here in Michigan?
How did they lose it? I'm wondering. Did the person get it?
I'm assuming that the person must have gotten it into their bank account and the bank was garnished. I mean, I don't think you can garnish the federal government and request them to get it. It would be over by the time they got the garnishment and processed it anyway. So,
right. I mean, we do with some of our, debt collection matters, right? I mean, we can issue garnishments against taxes or whatever, right?
Yeah,
I don't think there's a time to do that here. Is that what you're saying, Hugh?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of anyone garnishing the federal government to get that money, but once it gets into your bank account, if you have a creditor that has an existing garnishment against you, then I don't see how you can protect that. I mean, it's going to be...
It's fair game.
It's going to be susceptible to that garnishment just like a paycheck would be.
Exactly.
Right. What can you speak to regarding... after all this is said and done, I know we've touched lightly upon, how we see the courts moving forward. Let's just kind of say, fast forward, we're hearing about universities not opening in the fall. We're hearing about, we're going to have a new normal. What do each of you, and I'd like you to really, just take a minute for our viewers and our listeners. What do each of you, and I'll start with Brian first, think that, the state of our state or the state of our union will be, let's just say even a year from now?
Thanks for starting with me first.
I know it's a broad topic. Let's talk from the legal perspective.
Well, from a legal perspective, I mean, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be buying the lottery ticket because, that's one of the
right?
activities that is still encouraged by our wonderful governor here. That's a critical function, essential function. No, all joking aside, I think you're going to find, first of all, the courts are going to start adapting what used to be their norm and implementing some new policies and procedures. I think you're going to see it in terms of how many actual live motions and things are done, mediations, et cetera. Things that I think can be done remotely. I think you're going to see the Supreme Court and the various counties coming through and saying, let's do them remotely. Because let's face it, a year from now, if we believe everything that's been said, we are not going to have any anecdote. We're not going to have anything to take that's going to be able to say you're not going to get sick. And even if they did have something like that, how long is it going to last? You take a flu shot, you take it, why? You take one every single year. So a year from now, I think you're going to be coming over a second wave of this. How big it is, who knows? So essentially, I think the courts are going to be looking for mechanisms to make matters proceed quicker and not get tied up. Because let's face it, when this thing all started about, how long have we been sitting home now? Our office, 5 weeks?
Well,
6?
Technically, our office has been closed for 6 weeks. We were a week ahead because we saw it coming. And so we were preparing ourselves. And we started working remotely 6 weeks ago, and I like to think, taking care of our clients effectively and diligently still. And each one of us, we're all working very, very hard. But it has been 6 weeks. We are in the fifth week of the actual mandate from the governor.
Right, and within a week after we had decided to work remotely, you got the first executive order, and then I had a calendar that was packed with things in the past 6 weeks. And I saw at first some attorneys calling and saying, can we cancel this because in light of, let's just do it without date. Okay, sure. Let's cooperate with each other. Of course, there are some lawyers, as you well know, Sabrina, that are insisting on live hearings and want to fight through this.
Right.
But then I saw the court. That's an inside joke for those of you that are watching. Then we saw the court start canceling things and canceling without date. Now I'm seeing in the last week and a half a wave of new hearing dates. And I think those are going to get adjourned as well, because I don't think they realize, I think the courts feel forced to keep matters moving, but they haven't figured out how to keep them moving. So all they're doing is sending out new dates. And I think the closer to those new dates come, you're going to either see courtrooms and judges and staff that's so overwhelmed that they can't process everything. So they're going to have to come up with a way to really sort out what needs personal appearances to make matters go quicker. What can we do? Maybe like you have in federal court, you got federal magistrates, not the judges, that actually hear motions. In Wayne County and Oakland County and circuit courts in the state of Michigan, you have to have the judge hear a motion. You file briefs, he hears oral arguments. Federal court's different. You may find a new animal created in circuit courts. It could be a hearing judge that says, okay, we got the main judge for the main things and the main motions, but for discovery and whatnot, we're going to set up a magistrate to kind of handle this petty stuff to free up the circuit court judge to do things. I don't know. In fact, I like that idea, even if we didn't have Corona 19, CV19.
Well, thank you for that thorough answer, Brian. I know that, as you said, we may not have an immunization next year, so things could still be, moving along slowly. I know stadiums and sporting, events and concerts, who knows when those will be reopened. I know in the football realm and all the major sporting events, everyone's really sad not to have all of that on television, and the draft.
But today is the NFL draft.
Yeah, remote.
And our wonderful commissioner is going to be, with the first pick in the first round, whoever they are, he's going to do that from his basement.
Well, let's hope in the fall that we can resume, normalcy with respect to sporting events. I don't know. We'll see. Hugh, I know you've done a lot of research into the notarizing of the documents and the witness lists and, witnesses and signing documents. I know now, actually, before we move ahead for next year, why don't you tell our viewers what the laws are now regarding, signature blocks and notaries?
Yeah, one of the 56 executive orders that came down from the governor was the ability of notaries to notarize things remotely. And she set forth specific guidelines on how to do that, which aren't overly egregious in my opinion. I mean, we have to do it through a video conference, something like this, where we can both see and hear the person that is signing the document needs to be notarized. We have begun putting specific language in the document that we are notarizing, stating that it is being notarized under the particular executive order electronically, and therefore whoever is taking this document must accept that electronic signature as a true notarized document and signature. The toughest part about that is, under these new guidelines, is the person who is signing the document within 24 hours has to get that document electronically to the notary, so the notary can then notarize that signature. So we can't just witness someone notarize it over a Zoom meeting like this or over the internet like this and then say, okay, it's notarized. I mean, they have to scan it in, email it to the notary then prints it off, notarizes it, scans it back in, and emails it back to the person who originally signed the document. And same with the witnesses. The witnesses, to be on the safe side, we've been video recording. You have to record the video, but we've been recording the witnesses signing the documents as well. So everything's all there in a nice video recording showing that everyone did it. Technically, if the witnesses are known to the notary, they don't have to have that part done on the video and recorded. But again, to be on the safe side, I highly recommend you do it. But like I said, the criteria is there. We know what it is. We can do it. We've been doing it. So if you have a document that needs to be notarized, we're able to do that.
So moving forward, same question to you, Hugh. Do you think that will change? Do you think that will stay, in place as an effective way to notarize documents? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, even before this, Michigan technically was a remote notary state. We did have the ability to do that, but there were only 5 companies within the state that were authorized to do that. And a notary had to be affiliated with one of those entities in order to do a remote notary. And it was done similar, but yet different than the way it's set up now. I think that this will continue. I think that notaries should be able to do it on their own as long as the criteria are met. I'm hoping the governor will extend this order. Right now it's set to expire on May 10th. I'm hoping that she'll extend that executive order so that we can notarize things remotely. It doesn't make any sense to me that only 5 companies are authorized to do it remotely when every notary should be, as long as they follow the proper criteria, which is spelled out quite clearly now on what you got to do.
Right. Okay. Well, and I know, Hugh, with our matters, and I know you've been quite busy with a lot of our emergency motions, and whether it's with respect to co-parenting issues or guardianship issues or even business matters. What can you tell our viewers today that will help them, whether it's through this time period or even after, just a little takeaway for them?
The little takeaway, I guess, is, again, even though the courts are closed, they're still open. And I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but for emergency situations, I mean, you can still do it. I mean, we have initiated new cases. We have filed motions. We have had hearings with judges. So if something needs to be taken care of, we can still do it. For those items that aren't emergencies now, I've been encouraging my clients and have been getting information from the clients in drafting motions in preparation to file when the courts do fully open again, because there is going to be, in my opinion, just a flood of pleadings that are filed once the courts do open. And if you don't have that stuff ready ahead of time, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So you really want to get that stuff prepared and ready to go, because once the courts do open it back up again, I don't know, like Brian was saying earlier, I don't know how they're going to handle it. It's going to be a floodgate that's going to open, and there's going to be just massive amounts of cases that are filed on that day. And there's going to have to be some change in the guidelines and the court rules on timing of things, because in my opinion, there's going to be no way the courts are going to be able to handle the situation and get things done timely under current court rules.
No, I know, on those, for Oakland County specifically, I know on those Wednesday motion hearings, those motion calls after, a holiday or something, it is just insanity. And so I can imagine how all the courts around the state are just going to be crazy busy. And, God help all those law clerks and, the support staff of all those judges and all the, everybody trying to read all the briefs and motions. It will be busy. Brian, and in terms of like litigation and, what's a takeaway that our guests can have to empower them throughout this time period or even after, whether it's litigation or any area of law that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I won't talk about litigation because it is what it is. I think if simply for litigation, if you've been hurt and you want to file a lawsuit, start making a journal, keep notes, reach out to an attorney. The time will come. The statute of limitations just for a personal injury is 3 years. So if something happens now, you're not going to be out of luck. But I do have a little takeaway for business. You got business owners, especially small ones that maybe are growing and been in the growth mode until these recent events, and now their doors are closed. And of course, a great deal of your time is worried about, am I going to get my PPP? Am I going to have to shut down? What am I going to do next? But worrying can't reopen the doors. So we know that, I'm not saying don't worry. It's human nature. We're all going to do it. But, with that other time, once you're done worrying and say, okay, I'm not accomplishing anything, think about some of the things that you should do, you always wanted to do for your business that you never had the time to do because you were waiting on customers, taking care of payroll, taking care of keeping the doors open. I'll give you a couple examples. I know I've got companies that have opened up LLCs, never got around to doing an operating agreement, even though you need one under Michigan law. Or a company said, I started with myself and 3 friends. We got this business going. We've got 11 employees. I never did an employee handbook, and we're going to hire more. Or, gee, I've never gone through and done some policies and procedures. Or simple forms and things that you never have the time when you're working 18 hours a day to keep your shop up and running. Now you got the time, you know, with anticipation and hope, believe that things are going to work out and you're going to open your doors again, and use the time that you've got on your hands now wisely to get some of those things done. Because let's face it, when the doors open up, you're going to again be engulfed in, if you're a restaurant, how am I going to change who I allow in? Who am I going to hire back? Social distancing while we eat, sanitization, all those things that you're going to have to deal with it. Fine. So deal with the things that you won't have time to later that you maybe put off, whether it be policies, procedures, employee handbooks, some rules and regulations, looking at corporate documents, you know, some of those fundamental things that, quite frankly, that you need, but when you're growing, you don't think about. But when you've grown too big and something happens, you go, oh my goodness, why didn't I have it?
Right. No, that's a very good point, because, you know, some people now, you know the old saying, you know, you get more done the busier you are. You know, I think now people are using this time either to stay lazy or, you know, just kind of be apathetic at home or not do things. You know, and it's really tough though to find that motivation. You know, it's just the days, you know, kind of melt into one another. And I, you know, I'm not placing blame or being judgmental. It just is what it is. There are so many people that have a difficult time finding that motivation to even put their tennis shoes on and walk outside for 5 minutes. You know, it's, you know, and, you know, there is some truth to the fact that, you know, depression can be circumstantial, you know, environmental. People are getting into this funk, and they're letting their anxiety and the fear of the unknown kind of overtake them. So if we can help you motivate, if we can help you through this process, let us be your strength. Let us take on these burdens for you, and we can help you so that when you do open up the doors again, or when you are ready to be back in business, you'll be back in business stronger and better. And actually, you know, as unfortunate as all this is with having to lay off employees or not really sure, you know, if this person can come back or not, really look at that and look at the efficacy of this employee. Were they diligent? Were they a good worker for you? You know, take the time to really analyze your staff, and you know, maybe it's better that you have less people when you go back to, you know, full force in the fall or whenever we're all going to resume normalcy. But, you know, take a look at that, you know, really analyze not only yourself and how you can be better, because they always say that in business, the chokehold of a company is the leader, right? And all the negative aspects of a business just stem from the leader. So, you know, you got to look at yourself and look how you can improve, but then also really dive deep into the microcosmic, you know, portions of your business. Do you need that employee? Do you need these policies and procedures? And we can help you through this time so that we can help you be better in the end of this pandemic and when we all start our normal routine. Because even though, as we all have discussed, that our new normal may be very new and different from what we've been accustomed to all these years, but it actually could be better. And we can actually not only have a better company and a better set of employees all the way around, but we ourselves can be better, and our whole state and nation in general can grow and profit and benefit from all of this and all of what we've learned during this time.
In fact, Sabrina, one of the things we do as a follow-up to what you were just saying is we're conducting legal audits. We do that as part of our business, where a company comes in and says, you know, check the legal health of my company. And we're doing them now, and actually now's the good time to do it, because you're not caught up with the operating of the business, but you could rather be focused in on the audit to fix problems, to bolster up things that need just a little bit, and maybe scrap some things that just aren't working.
Yes. So thank you all for watching our show today. We're going to be back again next Thursday with more ideas, more helpful thoughts, and you know, we can dive deep into any area of law that you have questions about. This is a free forum for you to just ask any questions, and we're here for you 24/7. Not only Hugh, Brian, myself, but our whole legal team is out there ready for you. Please let us be your strength during this time. Let us help you so that you can not only survive during this time, but really thrive and be better and stronger and just out there and just be more profitable. We want you to be as prosperous in your life as you possibly can. Thanks for joining us today, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.